Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Dan, and I also go by A-Drive, and I'm the creator of Elestrals TCG. I wanted to make a video to discuss some of the pitfalls and challenges that I had when creating Elestrals and creating one of the most successful Kickstarters in the TCG space, where we raised $1.4 million. It was certainly no easy feat to get to that level, but again, a lot of things went wrong along the way, and I want to shed some light onto some of those things to help other people in this similar situation to me, but also just to give you guys some backstory on some of the decisions that I made and the lessons that I learned in the process. To start, I think it's important to give some context that I personally have been a successful content creator in the Pokemon space for a really long time, about a decade now, and I've grown my channels to over 1 million subscribers on YouTube and, a pretty good following on other platforms. So I had a really, pretty sizable audience of people who were at least interested in hearing what I had to say when it come to, building my own game or creating the TCG. But I knew that even with all of that, there was going to be some skepticism anytime a content creator or anybody comes out with something new. So it was a huge focus of mine to make sure that I could establish as much credibility and legitimacy with the product that I was making. So I went to great lengths to get samples and actual products of things before we even launched our Kickstarter. So that level of preparedness, I think, really was a key. But along the way, again, I ran into a lot of issues. So let's just dive into those. So one of the first things that I learned and made a big mistake in the early stages is having people around me to help me build what I was trying to build. I set some pretty lofty expectations for myself, and I set some pretty significant goals that I wanted to achieve, and I did a lot of it kind of solo for a long time with the help of some artists, but in terms of the running the business aspect, I was pretty much doing it all myself, and it became quite a bit to bear, and it became very challenging. So I highly recommend and encourage people to get people involved and find people that are trustworthy that can help you kind of steer, at least give you a soundboard so you can make more sound and kind of focused decisions that will ultimately be more beneficial for the campaign. For me, I ended up hiring a Kickstarter consultant as we got closer to launching the Kickstarter. I found the whole platform to be a little overwhelming. There's so much to consider and so many things to do. And I knew that with, my personal time investment and my own financial investment into the project, I was not, in a situation where I was willing to let it not do as well as it possibly could do. So I felt it was essential to get a professional on board, someone who has ran dozens of Kickstarter campaigns and could give me the ideas and the best practices to help guide me in a direction that is going to not only make the information presentable to people, but to make people understand what you're trying to present and give people everything that they need, all the information they need so they can make the best decision themselves. And again, it all comes back to transparency and clarity. For me, it was so crucial that we showed everybody exactly what we were trying to do and not only showed them what we have today, but give them a taste of what the roadmap looks like. I think all of those pieces are really important. So again, surrounding yourself with the right people and making sure that you get the help that you need, especially in the areas that you're deficient in. Not everyone is going to be excellent in every aspect of trying to build something, a card game or any business to go to Kickstarter. So understand that, you got to find the right people to help you that you can trust. And with that, I feel like the next point of feedback that I wanted to give and kind of mistake that I made is you got to take in the feedback that you get from the people around you and also the people that are interested in what you're trying to build, your community. But I think you have to also make sure that you stand with your convictions and your initial vision. For me, I created Elestrals for a lot of reasons. I created it to bring people together in person, coming out of an era where we were locked inside of our houses from COVID. I created Elestrals to be more accessible for younger people to get involved and share some of that nostalgia that I had as a kid. Card games were so important to me growing up in terms of being around other people, playing, making friends, and learning and thinking strategically. There's so many benefits, in my opinion, to card games. So for me, that was a huge driving force of mine, and my kids were a huge driving force of mine. I think while getting feedback from the community is important, it's also important to not let that be the absolute definition, because if you take some kind of negative feedback coming in and you go to try to change too much just to cater to that one person, it may steer you away from your kind of original convictions, or it may actually steer you away from the rest of your community. So I think you got to always kind of have your ears open so you can listen and take in the feedback and make the best decisions. But sometimes the best decision is to just not do anything. Sometimes it's best to just stay put in the situation you're in. I think one of the biggest challenges for me was figuring out the manufacturing side of things. And if you don't know me personally, you might not know this, but I'm someone who likes to run towards the fire. Not actually, but in terms of my own personal development and my career development, I like to see challenges and I like to see them through. And when it came to this Kickstarter and this project and Elestrals and what I was creating, I knew that when I announced it and when I took this journey, it was something that was not going to be something for the short term, right? Like when you commit to something like this, you really have to see it through, not just through the Kickstarter, but through the long haul. And that was something I was very much so ready for, not only mentally, but physically. But as part of that, I decided that I wanted to learn every aspect of this process. I wanted to learn the manufacturing. I wanted to learn the card design. I wanted to figure it all out myself. And it proved to be a significant challenge. So what I would recommend for people is there are publishers out there, and now Elestrals is working with a publisher after having some hiccups with our manufacturing for Kickstarter, which I think is always going to happen, but I ended up moving to a publisher, and so far I've been really happy with working with them. They basically handle kind of the middleman between the factories and the manufacturing and the regulations and all this different stuff, and you, the person trying to create whatever you're trying to create. So having that kind of middle person there, or that middle company, is, in my opinion, very beneficial because it accelerates the learning process in a way, or at least shortcuts some of the learning process. For me, again, it was essential that I learned and failed and learned from those failures and made these mistakes so that way I can learn and do better and teach people down the road and be able to make educated decisions down the road. If I understand all of the pieces of manufacturing and how to work with different manufacturers and kind of what their expectations are and just all of these different pieces of it, logistics and all this stuff, if I learn it myself, then I'm better equipped for the future. But I think for most people, it might be best to try to have someone kind of in the middle there, just because, again, it is incredibly overwhelming, especially if you're not familiar with it. And it became one of the biggest challenges in all of this. And at the end of the day, I ended up kind of, finding a solution that, revolves me not having to be so in that part of it. So I think you could go either way, but it's just a point of, discussion that I think for a lot of people, it might be best to just get a professional involved in terms of the manufacturing side of things. And with that, there is a lot of safety and regulation testing when it comes to creating your own products. I had no idea, and it was something that surprised me, and it cost my business tens of thousands of dollars because we were caught kind of unprepared. I guess we probably would have had to pay that money or most of it anyway, but nonetheless, it turns out there's a lot of regulations across the world for different standards in manufacturing to ensure that your products meet these standards and they're safe for people and all that stuff. And me, I'm over here making a card game. I'm thinking, what could really go wrong? Someone gets a paper cut. But in all seriousness, you really do have to kind of follow these different standards if you're trying to build something sustainable and something real. And it can be pretty costly, but at the same time, it caught me by surprise. I just had no idea this stuff existed. So in the context of us releasing a handful of different plushies, it turns out for us to sell these plushies to certain parts of the world, I'm looking at you, United Kingdom, you have to go through some more extensive testing, and as a result, we found out that our packaging actually didn't meet the testing, so we had to repackage hundreds of plushies, and as you can imagine, there's some costs that were incurred there. So that's where the publisher comes in, I think is really helpful, is you kind of have a middle person who probably knows all of these things, and you can kind of avoid some of these mistakes. Or you just watch my video, and then you'll get a little bit more insight there. And even now, I'll tell you guys, the safety and regulation stuff is a huge nightmare. Apparently, it changes every year as these countries change their laws and their requirements, and it is a very stressful and challenging part of manufacturing. I can't emphasize enough how thankful I am that I have a publisher right now that is dealing with most of this for me. One of the mistakes that I made when I kind of started the project is I'm not someone who is very organized, if I'm being completely honest with you. I'm someone who keeps a lot of my information in my brain, and I kind of just am quick with accessing that information and staying on top of things pretty well, but organization is definitely not my strong suit, and it basically resulted in us having to kind of overhaul our entire back-end system when I brought in some people to finally come and make it organized. So, and even now we're still trying to keep it super organized and stuff, but I would say from day one, even if you're not a super organized person, it's probably worth labeling your files with dates and organizing them in proper folders, and just keeping your contracts in one place, and you'll save yourself a lot of headaches and stuff down the road. And as a result of that, we ran into a few kind of hiccups along the way. We have a QA process. This is all speaking more for the Kickstarter, but we had a QA process and we missed a few things, and it ultimately resulted in we had the wrong barcode on some of our products, and that had to be rebarcoded, and all of these things incur costs. They're expensive lessons to learn. I think if we were a little bit more organized, we probably would have avoided some of those small mistakes. And at the end of the day, I tell these mistakes with kind of the understanding that I don't regret making them because I'm probably not going to make them again. But if you can avoid them entirely, it's probably for the better. If you're really trying to create a serious Kickstarter campaign, I think it's important to realize that there's a lot of other companies out there that are doing the exact same thing. There are huge mega companies with hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that they can invest into their Kickstarters. While you don't need to quite get to that level, I think it's important that if you're gonna spend all this time creating something awesome, that you have a way to share it with anyone out there who might be relevant to your audience or someone who might be interested in what you're creating. So in my context, I was creating a card game, and while I built most of my audience based on video games, I knew that I could probably tell my video game audience about my card game and some people would be interested. But I also realized that I needed to do some forms of advertising outside of that. I needed to reach out to other content creators and have them check out the game and promote it if they felt it was worth promoting. And I also tried some more kind of traditional Facebook ads and all that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, we failed big on that. I flopped so hard when it came to that. And that's something that I need to do a little bit more research on myself and figure out how I can execute better on. At the end of the day, like, we ended up pulling our Facebook ads and lost money on those. They were not a good, play for us. But the reality of it is, it's a super valid form of advertising, and it could be a much more effective route if we figure out how to execute better. So I would definitely take a little bit more time to learn that type of advertising as opposed to just leaning so heavily onto the creator side of advertising, which is what I did. But at the same time, I think at the end of the day, having a mix of different forms of advertising is always going to be your best bet, and you're going to have to find out kind of what is the most impactful for your business and what you're trying to do. But I think it's important to realize, like, if you're going into a Kickstarter and you're just expecting kind of natural virality to happen or Kickstarter to promote you and kind of get lucky, I feel like that's a little kind of not the best approach. I think you have to at least have some strategy involved, and it can be as simple as just sending stuff to people so they can check it out, like finding real organic ways for people to talk about what you're doing. Word of mouth is the most powerful form of marketing. So if you have something that's really substantial and you have a great idea or something that people are really excited about, the word's gonna spread fast. So you just gotta get it in the hands of the right people so that you can allow that to take place. And another little tidbit of information, which I never really thought of, is I had sponsored a lot of content creators, which is something I was really proud of. As a content creator myself, it brought me a lot of joy that I could sponsor some of my friends and other content creators in the space and help them kind of follow their dreams, right? So that was a huge win, but I made a big mistake in this process, and I organized all of the posters to post on like the same days. So what happened was we ended up in a situation where large droves of community members would see a lot of creators in the same space advertising the game at the same exact time, and it actually came off as inauthentic as a result. And I think it's always challenging to have authentic advertising, like real authentic advertising that doesn't come off as an ad. That's always a challenge for any company or any brand or anything, right? As a creator, I can say it on the other end, like it, when you have a product that you really believe in, it comes through for sure. But sometimes in the context of this, I think a lot of people really liked what we were doing, but because so many creators were saying similar things around the same time, it certainly raised some red flags. So I think on my end, I just recognize that that's probably not the best approach in the future, and there's a better way to spread things out, not just among communities, but among timing and products and ways to integrate, so it's not so much of the same stuff. I think when you can really hone in on that type of advertising and recognize that each individual creator has their own vibe, their own type of content, and really tap into that. We tried to do it. I think we did well, but I think there's even further to go with that in terms of really making it so anyone you're working with or any type of advertising media is authentic to where it's stationed, the platform, the creator, the whatever the medium it is. Keeping that authentic as possible is only going to increase the messaging and allow people to resonate better with it and see exactly what you're trying to do, which is show people that you have a really awesome product that they should totally check out. So listen, I don't know everything about doing a Kickstarter or creating a business or making a card game, but I'm figuring it out as I go, and I've made a lot of mistakes, as you can see, but so far, so good. I've learned a lot. I'm gonna only get better at it, and it's gonna be a really fun journey. So if you saw this because you're trying to do your own Kickstarter, I wish you the very best of luck. If you saw this because you're an Elestrals fan, I hope you enjoy hearing a little bit more about the journey. This is going to be a fun one, guys. I'm here for the long run, so I hope you're ready. Strap in. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.